It's time. We are back with another season of the 0 to 3K series where I will be pugging on a brand new role that I've never played at a high level. Since we have already done DPS and tank, it is finally time to do a healer. For those of you that might be new here or maybe just need a refresher of the rules of this challenge, I'm going to be trying to reach 3000 Raider.io score with only pugs. So here are the rules. I'm going to take a very low item level character, rarely use professions. I can't willingly play with any friends, guildies, or subscribers if I know it's them. Although people I meet during this challenge who don't know who I am, I can add to play with. I will be allowed to use some gold from my main consumables and crafted gear. They definitely won't be excessive. Finally, to not influence anyone to add me to a group they otherwise wouldn't, I will be unlinking this character from my main Raider.io. Point of this challenge is to hopefully give players that say that it is impossible to pug to higher level keys a better perspective on what is possible if you really do put in the time and are a good enough player. Before we get into the challenge, I would really appreciate it if you guys would drop a like and subscribe.
Charge.
Also, be sure to check out my Twitch in the description and drop a follow. So yes, many of you may have noticed the footage in the background. We will be playing the Preservation Evoker for this series. A few reasons for that, which I will go over right now. In the meantime, I'm going to be setting up my bars and keybinds in the background. So I did have a few comments last season that I was playing a class that was too good, which was the Prot Paladin. To be completely honest, I had picked Paladin before the season even started, and I had no idea that they would be the second best tank. I still think that it is possible to reach 3K with only pugs on any spec in the game. To prove this point, I was originally going to do this challenge on Holy Paladin, since according to most tier lists, that is the worst healer right now for Mythic Plus. I realized though that there would be no way for me to hide my score from last season on my Paladin, since I can hide my main score, but since that was score that I got on that character last season, it's gonna show up that I had 3K score, which I definitely think would influence this challenge. My Evoker was the lowest rank healer on the tier list that I have at max level, and that I also didn't plan on playing any of the off specs like I did with the Shadow Priest. Now that I have my bars set up, I want to get a talent build. Early on, this build might not be as effective because I don't have my 4 set, but that shouldn't take too long to get since we are now 3 weeks into the patch and we get a new catalyst charge every week. So tiers should become available in no time. I got my talent build from Archon, which is a pretty useful tool by Warcraft logs that allows you to see what top players are running for stats, talents, consumables, and gear in both Mythic Plus and Raid. Now that we are pretty much ready, I want to show you guys what my starting point is. We are item level 446, and last season I did a few keys as augmentation and got about 500 score. So while I was setting up my character, I actually noticed that we have a Great Vault from last season. So I am going to open that since it'll be season 3 loot, which will possibly be useful now. But in terms of the whole series, it's going to be pretty minor. I'm kind of hoping for gloves, I guess, or maybe a necklace, just because biggest item level upgrade there. I am in Prez loot spec, so yeah, let's see what we get. Okay, so we have either wrist that I already have, or a staff. I could go with the staff, but I don't really think it's going to be too much of an upgrade, if any. And these tokens of merit, since they're from last season, are just worth gold. So yeah, I don't really think this is going to be too big of a choice. So I think I'm just going to take the tokens of merit here. This does have good stats, but it's 454. So I think we're just going to go with the token of merits. But I did notice that crit mastery is very good stats, so that is something that we definitely have to keep in mind for this. So that's going to be a little bit more gold that I can use to spend on consumables, enchants, things like that. So there's a few different things I want to do this week. The first one being the weekly quest for our spark, which will eventually allow us to craft 525 gear once we get enough aspect crests. And this will be a massive boost to our power. I already mentioned the catalyst. There's actually one new system for season 4, which, since it is a fated season, we'll be playing the dragonflight raids on a weekly rotation until eventually they will all be available on this higher difficulty. There's a bullion system where you actually receive 1 per week, and once you have 2, you can purchase most of the weapons, trinkets, and rings from all 3 raids and upgrade them all the way up to their maximum item level. I basically want to try to get as many of the catch-up bullions as soon as possible. With the weekly quest, I went around and did a few events to get 100 Dream Surge Coalescence, which gave me a few pieces of 454 gear that can then upgrade further than my current pieces and body 467 chest piece. After that, I went to complete a Super Bloom and plant 3 Dream Seeds in the Emerald Dream. I also killed the world boss while I was there, and while flying around, I completed a few world quests. My main goal is to try to get to 463 so I can queue up for LFR. A little reminder, if you missed any of the previous series, be sure to check them out with the playlists on my channel. You can see my balanced druid version and the prop paladin version of this challenge. I had a few caches to open, which gave me a few cloaks, a helmet, and a necklace. Now that we have our spark, it is time to farm a few more world quests for gear before we upgrade our gear with flight stones. Now we have made it to 463, we can queue up for LFR and get some easy gear, and more importantly, our catch-up bullion. From all my boss kills, I only ever got a belt from Narloot, although I did get one later from the postmaster that was about 3 item levels higher. I also realized this character doesn't have the helm enchant quest, so before I did LFR, I picked that up as well. After LFR, I realized that I could get some gear from a time rift, so I went over and completed one, and I used the reward to buy a trinket. The final thing I want to do for the first episode of the series is to complete the weekly quest, which is 4 mythic dungeons, which will give us 2 extra bullions for a total of 5, and then eventually 6 next week. Our first dungeon was Netheris. I won't talk too much about these dungeons since they are only +0s other than the loot I get, but one other big change with season 4 is with how dungeon scaling works. Blizzard squished down the key levels so that a mythic 0 is the equivalent
Chain
of a
acquired.
+10 from last season. This means that now +10s are the same
Chain
as
used.
20s from last season, so +7s will actually drop hero track gear at the end of the dungeon, and 8s will give you myth track loot in your vault. At the end of the dungeon, I got a Spoils of Netheris, a big item level upgrade, but it's not very good, so hopefully we will upgrade out of that. Next, I joined an Lanar Academy, which was a bit interesting. I joined this group before the tank, who was actually a pretty chill guy who I've done some mythic raids with before called Spooky. This is his alt, and I didn't even recognize him or his name until the dungeon was already over. His item level was around the same as the other people in my group, but still higher than mine. I'm not too sure if he even recognized me or not, but either way, I don't think this had any real effect on this challenge, since the mythic +0s aren't too bad, and I didn't intentionally join his group, and I also don't really think it was a carry, considering his item level wasn't too high. I did get some shoulders that dropped for me from the last boss, and they were doing more runs, but I decided to join a fresh group, which was a Brackenhide Hollow. I didn't get any loot from this dungeon, but I finally joined a Ruby Life Pool, where I got 2 trinkets, a Ruby Whelp Shell, and the Seer Embers. Both of these aren't amazing by any means, but I will probably use the Ruby Whelp Shell for now. I went back to Valdrakken and handed in my weekly quest. Overall, I'm pretty happy with my progress today. Definitely gonna have to do some research on what situations I'm supposed to use my spells in and my CDs. So pretty excited to see how this series goes and interested to see how much I can learn and maybe how much I can improve. As for our vault, we managed to get 3 LFR slots, and 2 dungeon slots from the Mythic Zeros. So be sure to check out our video next week to see what we get from the vault. That is going to be the end for week 1 of the 0 to 3K series. Thank you guys very much for watching. If there's any content you guys want to see from me other than pugging challenges, be sure to let me know in the comments and make sure to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.